I think that's the first time we've ever got a big fat zero. Vote for the music! Tell me! Electro Velvet, get it? You see?
That is good evening in French and Dutch, although I've got absolutely no idea which is which.
0 points.
0 points. 0 points.
Being a British Euro fan is literally the trenches. First of all, thank you so much for the love on my last video. I have received so many words of support. I've got new viewers and I'm very excited to keep making new content. Secondly, yes, my bra straps are showing because it is insanely hot today, so you guys are just gonna have to deal with it today and stop being wusses if you're offended. Earlier this year I made a video on how the UK can win Eurovision, and I did a really big deep dive into what makes a Eurovision winning entry. And in this video I theorised a formula that the UK needs to follow in order to start getting good results again. Please go and watch the video if you haven't already. I will link it here right now. It was my love child and I put so much time and energy into it. But for those of you who can't be bothered to click off this video, or for those of you who have already seen it, this video is essentially a part 2 to this video. I'm going to be talking about the UK at Eurovision, specifically our entry this year, why we didn't perform well with the televote, and what we need to do differently going forward. So before I uploaded the video, the song and artist for the UK had already been picked. I believe in an interview with a British TV show, Remember Monday said they were actually picked just before Christmas, but they didn't come with a song, so they spent about a month brainstorming with other writers, songs they could perform at Eurovision, and then that's how they came up with What the Hell Just Happened. So this time I'm going to give the BBC the benefit of the doubt that they didn't watch my video before picking the song. First things first, I want to make one thing very, very clear. Remember Monday are not at fault at all. If anything, I think they were amazing artists to pick. I'm not sure if saying this goes fully against what I said in my first video, but you do not need to pick a really popular national artist to do well at Eurovision. For example, JJ, who won Eurovision, didn't actually have any songs released before Wasted Love, and he went on to win the whole thing. Now, Remember Monday can sing. They're really confident and their vocals are super impressive. Remember Monday and JJ share competing on the competition The Voice in common, which means they both had experience competing in high pressure environments. Also, the girls of Remember Monday are genuine friends who met in their late teens. So this camaraderie is hugely beneficial because it means their chemistry is natural. And it also means that they can pull each other up as a team. Also, competing on Eurovision has been described by some past contestants as traumatic.
Is there any minute now they're going to announce the new UK act?
Yes.
Do you have any words of wisdom? Don't say don't do it. Encouraging words of wisdom.
Maybe just get yourself a really good therapist. Yes, good therapy, because you'll have a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
Okay.
So any difficulties that the trio may have faced mentally wouldn't have been done in isolation as they had each other. I think for 2025, the BBC really focused on finding an artist with consistent and great vocals, because unfortunately for the last 4 out of 5 contests, this had been our downfall. As I mentioned in my last video, excellent vocal quality is one of the key factors in making a Eurovision winner, and juries often appreciate this. This was very apparent because we managed to get 10th in the juries, even managing to squeeze a little cheeky
cheesy points
from Italy's one and only Topo Gigio. Now, when Remember Monday were first rumoured as the UK artist all the way back in February, I, as well as many others, did a little bit of digging. And to be honest, I wasn't a huge fan of their back catalogue. It was inoffensive enough, but it just wasn't the sort of music that I tend to gravitate towards. But I hold my hands up, our girls were great. I just wish they had a better song. If there's one thing that Eurovision has taught us, especially this year, amazing vocals and staging can't always save a middle-of-the-road song. Now, not to toot my own horn, but I usually have a pretty good instinct as to a song's chances from the first listen. And I'm really sorry to say, I actually felt a bit let down by What the Hell Just Happened on the first listen. It felt kitschy and cute, but that's the key word. Cute. And at Eurovision, cute doesn't always cut it. I do have some positives. genre-wise, the song stood out and the hook was very catchy. Though it was still very pop-based, it's quite nice that we ventured more into the musical theatre side, as this felt very reminiscent of British culture and it is a huge part of our musical identity. It was also nice to hear a little throwback to Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen, and it's something a lot of people picked up on the first listen without prior influence. The staging was good, but it wasn't anything groundbreaking. There were no surprises, very minimal change in the colour scheme and lighting. It was good, but it wasn't great. It certainly wasn't a standout staging package to people watching the rehearsals and also the live shows too. What didn't help was we performed right after Ukraine, who used a dreamlike filter on the camera the whole time and also had a lot of creative lighting work. They used bright colours and also had a little orb that floated between the backing singers and the lead singer. Ukraine are Eurovision powerhouses, and for good reason. They always nail a staging package and they take Eurovision very seriously. I will not hear any rhetoric in the comments about the war and how it impacted Ukraine's results. Ukraine have been a powerhouse ever since they debuted in 2004, which they won for the first of 3 times in 20 years. And to really put another nail in the coffin, Austria, who won Eurovision, performed right after us. Their staging was epic and the black and white filter completely contrasted with Remember Monday's colour scheme. The camera angles were also super creative and cinematic, and it felt more like a music video than a stage performance. What we need to bear in mind is we have no control over the running order. Yes, the producers will often try and put the bookies' favourites in favourable positions, but your song still needs to stand out no matter what position it's in or what's performing either side of it. But ultimately, the song just wasn't good enough. It just didn't stand out at all. Now, I'm mostly going to be using anecdotal evidence here, but the general consensus appeared to be that amongst Eurofans and casual fans, people liked the song, but it wasn't really anyone's favourite. This is particularly evident when you look at how we performed specifically in the televote. We were not even close to receiving a point. As I mentioned in my last video, naturally amongst the casual fans in the UK, there is an argument that people don't vote for us because they don't like us, no matter how good the song is. Now, this mostly isn't true because we came 5th in the televote in 2022, which I think a lot of people forget. However, I do believe that there is a level of expectation with the UK because we are an absolute powerhouse in the music industry. Because of this, I think expectations are naturally higher for people to actually want to pick up the phone and vote for us. We are a country which for decades have been accused of not taking the contest seriously, and unfortunately it seems like we're still fighting the allegations, and the songs we have been sending in recent years are certainly not helping. And as I mentioned in my last video, a song can sound pleasant sonically, maybe even a radio hit, but it doesn't mean it's a good song for Eurovision. And by a good song for Eurovision, I mean competitive to win. And this is what is so frustrating to me, especially as a British Euro fan. With our last few song choices, I'm not actually convinced that the delegation want to win, despite them claiming every year that they do. I remember seeing in a pretty early interview with Remember Monday that they were aiming for top 10, and I was thinking, unless this is just classic British modesty, surely we should be aiming higher than just top 10. We should be aiming to win. Implying that a top 10 result is ambitious for us is suggesting that they didn't have much confidence in the song to begin with, and they're expecting a middle-of-the-road result. And if the UK delegation does genuinely want to win, A, they need to watch this video and my last one, and B, I think they really need to do a deep analysis into the correlation of poor results versus what makes a Eurovision winner. Like I did. BBC, I have pretty much done the work for you if you want to give me a call. I think it goes without saying we should not go down the pop opera route. Third time will not be the charm. I promise. Now, I have always been yearning for the UK to send a rock song. I think the UK getting 2 zeros from the televote in a row should really be the push to make the delegation go the complete opposite end of the spectrum in terms of the genre. With the right execution, risks at Eurovision, whether it be the song itself or the staging, usually pay off. If they flatline, it's usually either the vocals or the stage direction that has let it down. But with the resources that the BBC have at their fingertips, they really don't have an excuse. Now, I wasn't quite sure where to put this in my video, but I think this is a pretty important thing that I want to say. In terms of the UK selection process, I want to make a few things clear. Just as usually around the time that people start to speculate the UK artist, I often see a lot of misinformation being spread. Now, naturally, being in the Eurovision community, having done press, having friends who are friends of people, you hear things. And most of the time, I take these things with a huge pinch of salt, as people love to spread rumours, and I'm not a fan of spreading misinformation or just being problematic in general. As hard as it is to believe, I do want to be taken seriously, and I want to be an important voice in this community. I believe a lot of what I've heard is already public knowledge. I've seen it in news articles. So the details I'm going to share are pretty vague, but hopefully you get the general gist of what the selection process is like. Of course, this is only relevant to recent years, and they very well might change the process for next year. So please take what I say with a pinch of salt. Also, a lot of this is just standard procedure with a lot of delegations who select internally, not just the UK. This is mostly based on contextual evidence I have. I am not getting sued. Please, BBC, I promise I'm not sharing anything that I haven't read publicly. When the BBC start the selection process, which is usually as early as the summer, they usually have a few bigger names in mind who they reach out to. This may be artists they have personal connections with through management, friends, artists who have expressed their interest in Eurovision before, or even just artists on their wish list. Now, the BBC and many other delegations have to spread their net wide because the odds are most artists will turn Eurovision down. This will either be due to scheduling conflicts, other priorities in their career, or they might simply not want to do Eurovision, which is absolutely fair. Not a lot of people realise that Eurovision takes up a good 5 months of the year. So this means a Eurovision artist tour that they've planned often has to get postponed, album plans have to be put on pause, and this may be a sacrifice that many artists don't want to take, and rightfully so. Also, artists may initially say yes to competing in Eurovision, but extenuating circumstances may mean that they have to drop out later in the process. Essentially, the BBC usually has to have a contingency. For example, Ollie Alexander was in the running to compete in 2022, but he had to drop out of the process because his management were resistant and he couldn't go against his contract.
Hi, mid-edit Faith here. I tried to find a source for this because I seem to remember reading about this, but I don't think it's ever been revealed why he didn't represent the UK at Eurovision in 2022, but it is suggested it's because Tap Music wanted to go with someone under their management, whereas Ollie Alexander was under a different management, so he wasn't picked. So, yeah.
Again, what I'm about to say is largely based on contextual evidence, but I believe part of this contingency involves the BBC reaching out to several smaller artists, as they are less likely to drop out of the process should they be interested. And I believe that Sam Ryder and Remember Monday were part of this contingency group in their respective years, and ultimately they ended up being chosen. Now, apologies that I can't find the interview they said this in because there are so many online, but I remember Monday suggesting in one of them that they felt like the underdogs in the selection process, which leads me to form a theory that the BBC potentially had a bigger artist in the lineup, but it didn't end up coming to fruition. But as I said, I'm really glad they were picked, and I think there was absolutely nothing more that they could have done, and I'm very proud of them. Aww. Now, I go into a lot more detail in my last video, but I think the reason that Sam Ryder's song has done so much better than our other entries, now including Remember Monday's entry, is because it was more universally liked. They weren't trying to combine genres, they stuck to one and they did it well. Granted, it was so much more elevated live than in the studio version. I can sometimes feel like I know what the UK delegation is trying to do, but they just can't quite grasp it. For example, they may have seen the success of the code last year and their creative use of mixing genres, and tried to replicate it this year. But what the hell just happened still just came across as a bit too safe. Ollie Alexander's team may have seen the success of Loreen the year before, with a well-produced pop song and imaginative abstract staging. But the song simply didn't have the wow moment that it needed to stand out from the pack in a very strong Eurovision year. And for once we did push the boat out with the staging, but we may have gone too far with it to the point where it actually ended up alienating the viewers. There is a slight disconnect, and I think what happens is the delegation can go tunnel vision on one or two aspects of a Eurovision entry, but not seeing it as the full package that it should be. And I think with some small redirection, maybe even someone looking at the selection with a fresh pair of eyes, we can eventually get back on track to getting better results long term. Also, I've noticed that solo acts tend to stand out more vocally than groups in terms of technique. There is a lot more pressure on solo artists as they can't rely on others to pick up the slack should they accidentally hit a flat note. There isn't anywhere that they can hide. Also, I found the camera work and staging a lot more experimental with Spaceman. As there was an equal focus on all three girls of the group, it actually may have made it harder for the viewer to feel more emotionally connected to the song, as opposed to if there's a lead singer or a focal point within a group like with Måneskin's Damiano David. And to be clear, the UK selection process is entirely internal. In other words, as far as I'm aware, you don't come to the BBC comes to you. Unless the BBC approaches your management or agency, there isn't really a way to submit your song. Now, the reason that I say this is because I've seen more than one artist claim that the BBC rejected their song from Eurovision. Instead, this often leads to some negative discourse in the community, with people saying things like, oh my god, the BBC is so stupid, they should have picked your song instead of this person. What may have happened was the artist submitted their song by email to the delegation, heard nothing back, and then assumed that they just flat out got rejected, when in reality they just didn't follow the proper procedure. Odds are the delegation probably never even heard their song. If they were to listen to every single song they got sent by email, they would probably waste hours and hours every day. So if you see an artist next year claiming that the BBC rejected their song, please just bear this in mind. I understand that this is a great marketing tactic and I am in the field, but this often leads to a lot of negativity and it really leaves a bad taste in my mouth. So, what do the UK need to do next? Basically, everything that I said in my first video stands corrected. It isn't all bad. I can definitely see some positive progression in the delegation's picks. We switched up the genre a little bit and we picked excellent vocalists to guarantee us some jury points, which we got. But I think now is the time for the BBC to push the boat out a little bit more, take a leap, and take a risk. We need to stick to people who have consistent vocal prowess. Someone who is used to performing in a competition scenario or even under high amounts of pressure is very useful for them to be Eurovision ready. And they don't necessarily have to be a big name either. If we do choose another band or a group, there really needs to be a clear focal point, a lead singer, if you will, as this helps the connection between the viewer and the performance, and an emotional connection is what drives votes. Ultimately, everything comes down to the song, and if the song isn't a standout, there's only so much you can do to elevate it with staging. And I think this is what led to our downfall in the televote this year. What I think we have been missing the last few years is a big wow moment, and what a lot of us Eurovision fans like to call the winning moment. It doesn't even have to be a vocal moment, it can be visual too. This year it was Wasted Love's sudden switch up in genre, where the song and the staging intensifies dramatically. Last year it was Nemo balancing on the disc singing the really high impressive opera notes, and Loreen had an intensified final chorus with the staging evoking this too. The focus was solely on her and not the panini press anymore. I think for What the Hell Just Happened, I think the freedom part of the song is what maybe they intended to be the Eurovision winning moment. But even then, I think that's just me being wishful, and it felt a bit too derivative for it to feel wow. Like I did in the last video, there's a few more artists I'd like to give a shout out to who I think could be great representatives for the UK at Eurovision. As in, I feel like their genre and back catalogue really shows a lot of potential, but again, they need the right song. So here they are.
Shameless, bigger than me, dragging it behind me, up and in the staircase until the day
I just want to say a huge thank you for getting to the end of this video, and please leave a comment about what you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to follow me on X, or Twitter as I still call it, And I also set up a buy me a coffee link. As someone in my last video suggested I set one up, and there is absolutely no pressure to donate to it whatsoever. I feel really weird about asking for money, and I'd never ever do that because this isn't my job. I have a job. This is just fun on the side. But ultimately, any support is appreciated. I am currently saving up to buy a few things, one of them being a new Mac, because anyone who is a Mac owner or uses the Adobe suite will know how much energy these videos take up, and my 7-year-old Mac with really shit RAM is dying making these videos for you, and I'd love to be able to get a new one soon. Also, I'd love to be able to get new equipment like a microphone and a new camera, because I'm currently recording these on my iPhone, which is good, but I think we can do a little bit better. Also, for those who follow me on Twitter know that I'm a graphic designer, and I actually designed a few Eurovision posters, and I've actually sold a few, which is really cool. I'm currently working on a Xeon one, but if you're interested in purchasing any, please feel free to DM me on Twitter. I can pretty much ship worldwide. I don't have a shop set up. That might be something I do in the future. It's weird because despite me being a graphic designer, I'm not the most tech savvy. I'm really bad when it comes to these sorts of things. Thank you so much again, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye!
Well, cheesy points go to United Kingdom!